Welcome to Boxing During Dinner, BDD, Armando Alvarez, Victor Bermudez. And yes, that beautiful face you see right there, looking rested actually,
A little
is
bit.
the new dad, David Barry,
That's right.
who him and his beautiful wife Jessie gave she gave birth. You just stood there and watched
As an
uh
observer.
to Noah Lewis Barry. I saw him from a little distance because he still hasn't had his shots yet, but beautiful child. And congrats, David.
Thank you.
I'm over the moon happy for you because as a dad and as you being one of my best friends, I'm ecstatic.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. As you and I would say, 120, 105, parenthood. A
Exactly.
couple knockdowns in there. It's
Right
spectacular.
on time for Father's Day too.
Yeah, we had an
Yeah.
awesome day yesterday. I got spoiled with all my favorite foods. Regretted it today, and but it was a really nice day, and got a chance to hold my little guy, who will, of course, never remember that it was my first Father's Day. But it has been spectacular, and I completely understand people who say you won't understand until it happens to you, because I get it now.
Exactly. It's like, there's only so much like I remember my son's pediatrician said, oh, because we're like, oh, because this and this and this. And she's like, listen, these kids don't read the books. They don't read the manual. They don't, they're all different. Nothing can prepare you for parenthood. You just do your best and you'll get it, dude. It's,
Yeah.
it's amazing. It's
I,
amazing.
I want to use this as a segue, even though I'm not the true host, but I want to say, but speaking of sunning somebody, let's talk about Gabriel Rosado's knockout. But we
You
can save that transition.
No, but you know what? That's a great transition because sure we had title fights, but that was the moment of the weekend. I I did not watch it live. I was about to turn it on, and David there texted, "OMG, Gabe Rosado," and I'm like, "What the hell happened? Let me go." So I went on the zone. I hit rewind, and I was like, "Holy crap!" Um, you cannot be called Beck the bully and get knocked out like that. I mean, it was. I know that they were trying to compare it to the Pacquiao Marquez because yeah, it was a beautiful counter. Guy fell face first, but man, right on the ear. I mean, that just took everything out of him. I mean, hit you know those videos that like the guy hits the ground and like then the soul goes like fly like you seen all those people like doing those videos
Like
that
World Star.
like World Star. That's what it felt like. And good for Gabe Rosado, man, because that guy's been in wars. I've said many times Gabe Rosado should retire, and then to do something like that, man, kudos to him.
Yeah, I thought, as he will tell you, in the post fight interview, or as he did tell us in the post fight interview, that he thought he beat Danny Jacobs. I thought he did too. I don't
I
think it was
agree.
a particularly scintillating fight, but I thought he did what was necessary. And I saw somebody on Twitter the other day, and I kind of wanted to poke fun at them for it, but they made they made a case that maybe I'll regret the second it comes off my lips. That Gabriel Rosado has one of the best resumes in all of boxing. Now, granted, he hasn't always come out on the right side of it, as these things go. But people in and around his weight class, he's pretty much fought all comers. Especially, he's taken on a lot of guys at a time when no one wanted to. Triple G comes to mind. David Lemieux comes to mind. Granted, he came out on the wrong side of fights like that. So let's not talk about the resume as a quality score of him winning all of those fights. But Gabe Rosado is everything you could ask for in a prize fighter, who gives an honest account of himself every time out, who believes in his skills, who never shies away from an opportunity or a challenge. I mean, this guy was fighting. I even texted Armando this Beck the bully. I'd never seen him fight. I'd heard that the stock was high on him. He was 6-0, 5 knockouts. I didn't like his style at all. I texted Armando. I think this guy looks like he's 240 pounds. And I think on the night of the fight, he very well may have. But you obviously, I mean, he took Gabriel Rosado's body pretty hard from the opening bell and hurt Rosado, dropped him in the first round. And I thought that was going to be the story. And in any other scenario, maybe it would have been. But Gabriel Rosado, as a seasoned vet, timed it perfectly, knew what was coming. A lot of those punches were telegraphed for as powerful as they were. I wouldn't have gotten out of the way of any of them. I would have taken that first body shot in the first round and gone home. Gabe Rosado got up, figured it out, dusted himself off, and iced him in 3. It was everything you want to experience as a fight fan.
Man, what a right hand. And Victor, another guy that I could think of that's gonna come hard at Gabe Rosado and maybe you could catch him with a counter punch like that. Will be Edgar Berlanga. Talk about setting yourself up for a big fight like an Edgar Berlanga fight, because they have mentioned it, but you like I kind of always said, oh, you know what, but coming off a loss, coming off two losses, why would Gabe Rosado get the shot against Berlanga? And he knocks out Beck the Bully, and now that's a fight I would love to see. I mean, I think you know we could see what Berlanga's made of, because as David said, his losses have been against some of the top fighters in the division.
Yeah, it's something that we're looking to see Berlanga step in the ring with a seasoned vet, like David was saying, someone who's with a resume like Rosado's. I just look, I'm with you. I thought he should have retired a long time ago. Obviously, he shut us up on this past Saturday. So the fact that we had to see Rosado again, but I think if it's against Edgar, I think that's the end of the story right there. I think Edgar will knock him out. And as you said, like your soul leaving. Who knows if you'll ever find him again, because Edgar's a real problem. And when Edgar hits you, you're not getting up from it. I say that as his opponent just got out 4 times off the canvas his last fight. But dude, Edgar's a problem in that division. He's only getting better. But yeah, it's an interesting matchup. It's something that you would like to see, especially coming off his win on Saturday. But and Edgar needs an opponent. They need to put him as a headliner. He's past that, being co-main event. He should be headlining against some pretty decent competition, and Rosado would be that one.
And that was obviously on the undercard for Jaime Munguia, who beat and I'll butcher the guy's name. Is Zaramata?
Camille Sharameta.
Zarameta.
Dude, Jaime looked good.
Jaime looked good.
For the first time in a long time, Jaime made me think of the old Munguia, the one that we thought was going to be a problem coming up in 154 and looking at campaign at middleweight. I liked what I saw from him. You talk about a dominating performance. That was it. If there was one over the weekend that, because you said he had to get up off the canvas. He scored a knockout that maybe no one thought he would. But Jaime Munguia demonstrated that he is and can be a real legit threat to a lot of folks. And I was happy to see that. I've been waiting for that for a really long time.
Now the way he looked, David, Jaime Munguia, like Victor said, he reminded us of that Jaime Munguia of old, that before he fought Hogan, when we thought that this kid might be a problem in the division, where he was going to be the next great fighter coming out of Mexico. That same night, Jamal Charlo beat Juan Macias Montiel to defend his middleweight title. And as Victor, was saying earlier when we were talking off air, he kind of said later after the fight that his weight division is 160, because there were talks about him going up in weight. Obviously, you got Bubu Andrade, you got Canelo, obviously, you have Plant, and you have David Benavidez, which was a fight that me thinking was logically the next fight for him. But if he stays at 160, a fight against Munguia may not be bad.
No, and I'm sure among a lot of people did not go into the weekend thinking that I would pick Munguia to be a real live dog in a fight against Jamal Charlo going into the weekend. I was very low on Munguia. And even honestly, before the Dennis Hogan fight, I think he was sort of a different Mexican version of Paul Williams, a high output, minimal focus on defense, didn't necessarily use his tools to his advantage. I'm not saying it's the best comparison. It's just the first one that came to mind. He put together he broke down Camille Sharameta. He didn't blow through him. He boxed him. He used combinations in a way that I don't think we've seen him in a more balanced way. He didn't try to suffocate or overwhelm Sharameta, but that's exactly what happened. He never had a chance to get into any sort of a rhythm, and the fight was never in doubt. Now, granted, we're not talking a world-class opponent, but there's a guy who came over from Poland whose only loss was to Golovkin. I get it. You want to say apples to apples, how do the guys compare? That's sort of what happens at this stage in somebody's career. But, you jump back to him switching trainers to Eric Morales, and that raised a lot of question marks, including for people like me. And frankly, it just goes to show you don't judge a trainer by the style that you've seen them impose in their own careers, because he put together a masterclass performance that I didn't think he was going to have at this stage in his career. I thought we'd seen the ceiling on him, and it was just going to be what it was going to be. I don't think so anymore. I don't know that he beats Jermall Charlo. If that's the fight that we in theory want, and he is a mandatory challenger for that belt, so it's a claim he can make. But I think that it's a pretty close to even fight. And going into the weekend, you could have put a bullet in my head if I had said that without being sarcastic. He made me a believer this weekend.
And Victor, we expected Jermall Charlo to walk through Juan Macias Montiel. I mean, we spoke last week with Jesse Lozada on BDD, and we didn't even give this kid a chance. He's the nephew of Fernando Montiel, who was a great Mexican champion. But Montiel showed that he held his own. He showed that he could fight. He showed that he could take a punch. Granted, Munguia, who we were just talking about, took him out. And Jermall Charlo went 12 rounds with him. So what do you say about Charlo's performance? Because some people are saying he wasn't in shape. Other people are saying, sure, he was in shape. He just had a tough guy in front of him. Which one was it? Because, I mean, I saw some flashes from Jermall Charlo. I mean, I think he's an excellent fighter, him and his brother. But to let Montiel back into the fight, Montiel was answering his punches. He wasn't afraid to throw back. And then, you could say I don't know if he hurt him, but he caught his attention. That's for sure.
I can't sit here and have criticized Devin Haney a couple of weeks back for letting Linares back into the fight and then giving him a certain type of grade that didn't merit an A+, and then sit here and tell you, no, Charlo, he won at all 12 rounds, except maybe the 8th round that he gave away. But I'm not convinced with Charlo. I have more questions now than I've ever had with Charlo. Super middleweight, take that out of the picture. You're not a super middleweight. You can't compete at that division. You can't compete with the Caleb Plants of the world. Canelo, you're not even in the same, forget the division. You're not even in the same universe with Canelo Alvarez. Get that out of your head. You probably have a hard time with some of the middleweight competitors.
Benavidez beats him.
Benavidez knocks him out. Benavidez knocks out a lot of the super middleweights, a lot of the middleweights. Benavidez posted on his Instagram story right after the fight, I knock out this dude. Absolutely he does. Charlo was not the better conditioned fighter. Abner Morris pointed it out during the broadcast, said we know who the better conditioned fighter is. Charlo's the better fighter, but he's clearly not in the best shape of his career, or out of the two. I have a lot of question marks about Charlo, about both of them, to be honest with you. I had that going into the fight. I wanted for them to step up, as we mentioned with Jesse Lozada. The step up in competition needs to happen. I don't know if he's ready for that step up in competition. They're a draw. I get that. They're must watch because of the show and what they bring to the table. But I don't know if he's the top middleweight at the moment. I don't know if I'm not convinced. I have more question marks about the Charlo brothers than I did going into this fight. And I am not impressed at all. Granted, he won 11 out of 12 rounds, but why would you let him back into the fight like that? Why could and we sat here last week and we said how Chavez Jr. just didn't lend himself for a knockout, and sometimes these fighters they don't. But it seemed like Charlo could have taken him out when he wanted to, just didn't press. And then how did you allow him to get back into the fight? Conditioning is the only reason I can think of. So I'm not impressed with him at all, and I'd love to see what's next because there's a lot to work on.
And look, I've always thought Jermell is the better of the two brothers, and it's not a huge knock on Jermall. I just think Jermell has a bigger mean streak. I think he's a better fighter. I think he's notched the bigger wins. That one night where the Charlo brothers, one lost, one didn't, which was against Korobov,
Tony
right?
Harrison.
And Tony Harrison. I thought it was the opposite. I thought Jermell beat Harrison, although it was close. I don't think Jermall beat Korobov. I think Jermell's the better of the two brothers, but maybe David, Jermall just doesn't he's a good fighter. He's a champion. Maybe he just doesn't have that next level, because when he tried to unleash against Montiel, I think Jermel has the mean streak to have knocked him out, not Jermall.
Well, I agree on the mean streak, but I disagree on some of the other stuff. I do think Jamal's the better fighter, and I think he's shown it more consistently. I think Jermel's mean streak makes him a more exciting fighter, because you never know what you're going to get in terms of when he's going to turn up the heat. He himself has been clipped a few times. I will say I actually do agree that Jermel's probably had the better competition, but what's weird to me is I thought Jermall had a career-defining win against Derevianchenko in his last fight, and really showed a lot of the different tools. It was a great boxing performance, and then you have him fall off a cliff in his following fight, which makes me agree to an extent with Victor. Maybe what we saw was the best performance of his career against Derevianchenko, and the real Jermall Charlo is actually the guy who fought within a hair of losing to Matt Korobov and looking kind of against against Montiel this weekend. I don't know that he has that second level either. I think he's believed in his own hype quite a bit, and I think there's one of two things that can happen. And I'm a fan of the Charlo brothers in the sense that I think they are tough mentally. And if Jermall Charlo is tough mentally, then this is the pivot point in his career where he says, you know what, if I'm really going to be a class of this division, then I really have to do some things differently. I've got to fight more disciplined fights. I have to train in between fights like the way all these other guys do that I want to be. And I have to be able to sit down and show some power. Jermell has it. Jermall does have it as well. I mean, he's the one who put Julian Williams out like a light on that counter uppercut. But I think that he's kind of gotten complacent and languished in his career because he's waiting on these big fights. Well, now all of a sudden he might actually get him because people are going to see how beatable he is. And so it's time to put his money where his mouth is, because if not, someone's going to take his lunch. But I do think he is the character.
Andre was probably calling repeatedly after the fight.
Yep.
But so he showed that he is vulnerable. He's gonna get a lot of calls for fights. The one that I don't expect to be getting a lot of calls, gentlemen, to set up fights is Naoya Inoue, the monster. My goodness, dude! My God, the precision to the body. Goes to the liver, knocks him down, right back up, couple shots up, another shot to the liver. I mean, dude, he is so good. He's a killer. He's everything. He's as good as advertised. I know some people were questioning him after the Donaire fight, but look what Donaire's done since the fight with Inoue. And Donaire's just a tough son of a bitch. I mean, he's one of the best fighters to have fought in the last 20 years.
Ever.
Or ever, right? He's a beast. So Inoue comes out and he just takes care of business as he usually does. To me and Victor, we went through it last week with Jesse, that we were saying, does he deserve one of the top 3 spots in the pound for pound rankings? And we were even saying like top 5, because there are other guys like Canelo and the Crawfords and Errol Spence, etc., Tyson Fury, he definitely belongs up there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I owe Jesse and yourself an apology. I had him in the top 10, obviously, for sure. But yeah, put him in the top 5, man. Put him top 5. I'll be.
Some people have him number 1 or 2.
I know that's
a lot of people do.
I mentioned it last week. Rene Giraldo, who used to call Boxeo Telemundo for us, boxing Hall of Famer in the state of Florida, he has them in the top 3. And for a while, it's not just something that he's had recently, been telling me for quite some time. But you know me, I'm hesitant as long as you're not fighting in the States to put you in that top 5, top 3. He's it, man. He belongs in that top 5. As you mentioned, 3 straight shots, all 3 in the same location. It's just, I feel like he can take you out with however he decides to take you out. He was so impressive. And that's what you're looking for a fighter, that you come into the fight thinking, okay, he's going to handle his business and do what he's supposed to do, and not carry a guy who he should have taken out within 5 rounds, or give up a round in the 8th round, or look like he's the one that's out of shape when you get into the championship round. that is a true pound for pound fighter and deserves to be in that top 5. And my apologies for not having him in there prior to this weekend.
No, he did something like Canelo does. You know, you take out and I'm sorry, I can't call these people trash because they're fighters, but he takes out the ones that he should take out,
Yeah.
and you know he has the tougher fights against the guys he should have the tougher fights against. And David, when Inoue fights, and I don't know if this happens to you or not, when your wife walks in the room, you almost want to like change the channel because it's like if you're being caught watching porn because it's boxing porn, right?
It is,
Watching
man.
Inoue is boxing porn.
And I didn't have a chance to obviously join Victor.
I don't really do that.
This is magnificent. I'll just try to breeze right through that. I didn't have a chance to join you, Victor, and Jesse in the last conversation, but I can understand why some people might be like unsure, I guess, about Inoue, but maybe not after this weekend. He doesn't appear to do any one thing spectacularly, right? Excuse me. But if you look at him, there is not one thing that you can be critical of him, right? His speed. He has Floyd Mayweather type of speed in the sense that he's not your combination flashy speed like a Manny Pacquiao is, but he's precise. The Victor made a great point. Those body punches are never off by an inch. They're exactly where he wants to place them. His speed is timed so well. The knockout that he had of Maloney in his last fight is artistry. I can't think of a more beautiful knockout. It's subtle, but the guy's his pivot foot, his right foot in this instance, as an orthodox fighter, is in perfect position to turn over that right hand at the right moment. He gets full torque on it. That's the same thing that you saw on his body shots. He reminds me a lot of a Triple G, but who's better in almost every other way, maybe with the exception of the jab. But what's interesting, and Victor, called this out too, he gets guys out of there, but he's also not over pursuing them to do it. He's breaking them down with effective pressure, great combination punching, excellent timing. There's just not a thing that you can find, a weakness of his, other than the fact that maybe he does try to trade a little too much when you look at, Donaire. But if really that's the closest fight he's ever had, and he won that one by 3 or 4 rounds. So it's, the sky is the proverbial limit for him when you look at 122 and what's going on right now with Brandon Figueroa and Stephen Fulton hoping to clear out that division, and just a little bit below him at 115, some guys who could theoretically come up, and frankly, right in his own weight class, because now you have Donaire taking on Casemiro to replace Rigondeaux, which I know is going to piss you off, but Rigondeaux's there, who's apparently going to take on the winner of that fight. I mean, there's no other, I would love to see Rigondeaux versus Inoue, and the winner takes on the winner of Donaire versus Casemiro. So there's no shortage of fights. This guy's before the age of 30. He could be number 1 pound for pound within 18 months to 2 years.
And before we get to the forgetful part, right? Because we went through our appetizer, right, with Rosado. We went through dinner talking about Inoue, and I want to enjoy dinner a little bit more. Actually, let's do dessert first, right? And then we'll like spoil ourselves with like the garbage.
I don't even know where you're going, so I'm excited.
But for dessert, we talk about Inoue. To me, he's one of the must see fighters in all of boxing. If you had to pick 3 must see fighters right now, what would you pick?
Who's you in this case? Because I would like a second to.
Well,
I'll start then.
Go for it.
I'm always gonna go with Canelo Alvarez. That is must see because it is an event, and there's no one in the sport of boxing right now, and no one in the sport of boxing for a really long time that can pack 73,000 to the stands. Pandemic, pre-pandemic, after pandemic, I don't care. Canelo Alvarez has done it time in, time out. Yeah, he's put 30,000 into the Houston Astros Minute Maid Stadium. I'm not sure if it's still called that, but Canelo is must see attraction. Canelo is by far the biggest attraction there is in boxing. After that, I would say Errol Spence Jr. I love what Errol Spence Jr. brings to the table. I think he is number 2, number 3, right up there. And then I got to go with Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury knows how to sell a fight, is great in the fight, leading up to it, after the fight. Tyson Fury for me is, I would probably put him right after Canelo Alvarez. Errol Spence, I'm putting him in there because I think he is the future. I think I like him. I think he is better than Terrence Crawford. I've been saying that for quite some time. But if it's must see attraction, and I'm taking this not just from my perspective. I'm talking about casual fan. What's going to bring eyes to the television? Tyson Fury does that. Tyson Fury checks all the boxes. English gets. I saw this man walk. He's the heavyweight champion of the world, and should not be doing the things he does with crowds and fans. And I saw him walk right through the crowd at the weigh-in for Canelo Alvarez, Billy Joe Saunders. He doesn't take security. He's not looking to be escorted. He wants to feel and be a part of the ambiance of the crowd. And that, to me, is must-see TV. So I'd go Canelo Alvarez, Tyson Fury, and throw in Errol Spence Jr. in there because I think he's top pound for pound. And at one point, he'll be, once Canelo retires, I think he'll be the best fighter in the game.
Interesting. So I'm actually going to answer slightly differently because I actually think Tyson Fury is the greatest showman in the sport. But I'm actually going to add in somebody who's fighting opposite him in a few weeks as must-see TV when he fights, because Deontay Wilder is not someone that I personally find appealing in any number of ways. But here's the thing. He could still knock Tyson Fury out in this next fight because of this. And when you consider his dimensions, I saw something on Twitter today that he's got the weight of Israel Adesanya and the power of Francis Ngannou. That'll help UFC fighters sort of frame it together to understand what you're looking at in Deontay Wilder. So I'm not a huge fan of him, but I understand what he is. And if you're a casual fan of the sport, you come to see knockouts. And Deontay Wilder, in almost every single fight he's ever been in, has delivered one in an emphatic fashion. He's not a breakdown fighter. He's a lights out fighter. And then I'm going to also agree with Victor on Canelo Alvarez, but I'm going to stick in Inoue for all the reasons that I just talked about. I can't gush enough about him. If you had asked me this, a little while ago, I absolutely would have put Lomachenko in that mix too, because he does things in a boxing ring that nobody else does. Now, after the Teofimo Lopez fight, which I don't think was a terrible performance once he finally turned on the gas, but you do have the sense that Lomachenko's best days are probably behind him. He still has a lot of gas left in the tank, though, to deliver things that other people cannot. And I think he's a fascinating fighter to watch. So he's my asterisk on the end there.
Man, there's so many great guys. I love watching Terrence Crawford. I love watching Lomachenko. But if we must go like must see, I got to agree with both of you with Canelo, because Canelo right now, he's such a good fighter. The stuff he's doing in the ring is amazing. Inoue, for obvious reasons, what he just did this weekend, what he does almost every time out. And the third guy I got to add, every time this guy fights, must see TV for me and for all of you too, is Chocolatito. Chocolatito,
yes,
against anybody, is must see TV. I can't recall one boring Chocolatito fight.
That's so
I just can't. So those will be my top three. So we went through our 3-course meal. We're done with dessert. We're feeling good. But then we just start eating garbage, dude, and we feel bad. Our stomach hurts. We want to throw up, and we've gotten to that point of the night where we're just like, man, why did I eat that? For so many good fights this weekend, Julio effing Cesar Chavez Jr.
Oh my God!
What the? And you know what? I'm not gonna say he was the most talented fighter in the world when he was in his prime, because he wasn't. But he was pretty damn good. He beat Andy Lee. He beat Brian Vera. He was this close to beating Sergio Martinez, who was the legit middleweight champion at the time. He comes from boxing royalty. His dad, obviously, El Gran Campeón Mexicano. But I think back to one of my favorite movies and one of Victor's favorite movies, A Bronx Tale. There's nothing worse in the world than wasted talent. This kid not only had the talent, he had the name. Everything was served to him. Like, dude, here you go. Like, take it. And to his credit, he went out and proved a lot of doubters wrong. For better or worse, he had a world title at middleweight
that he defended several times.
For better or worse, he knocked down Sergio Martinez in the last round of their fight. And if that fight would have been 13 rounds, he would have been world middleweight champion of the world. This past weekend, I mean, after more than a few debacles, because he's had quite a few, he loses to 46-year-old Anderson Silva, who had fought only once before or twice before as a
Yeah, he was
as,
1-1, I think.
as a boxing pro. One of the greatest MMA fighters of all time. Don't get me wrong. My son's named Anderson, and he's one of the reasons. The guy was an outstanding mixed martial arts fighter, but when you're fighting, you're a 46-year-old MMA fighter, and you're fighting a former boxing world champion who's still in his 30s, still in his 30s. You shouldn't win that fight.
No.
And this guy went out and just embarrassed himself. I saw a funny meme, and I'll let you guys talk about this a little bit more because I'm about to like throw up. But I saw a meme of Chavez with Canelo after the fight, and the meme said
senior.
like, senior.
Senior, yeah.
And the meme said like, oh, Chavez Senior asked Canelo to be his son after the fight. Dude, what? I don't know, man. I'm at a loss for words.
I have to say, for all the things that we love hating about Junior, you did make an interesting point. Imagine how difficult it has to be to grow up in a place, in a country that worships boxing like God in Mexico, and your dad is Jesus Christ.
Basically.
That's the profile that you have to live up to. Anything less than being a prize fighter is going to be seen as a disappointment. And you never realize that that's not the thing you have to be in your own life until you reach that point of maturation where you can carve your own path. But Chavez Jr. grew up in the biggest shadow in all of Mexico, and
I don't even think he ever really liked boxing.
I don't either, and that's where I was going to go with that. I think he had natural talent, and probably saw that. Those around him probably saw that and recognized that with some decent promotion and enough discipline, he could make something of it. And you have evidence of that in the earlier parts of his career that he did. He was matched really well by Top Rank, safely. I think he fought Sebastian Zabik, who was a total accident middleweight champion in order to get his belt, but he did it. I kind of feel bad for Junior because, look, I think, has he disrespected the sport of boxing? Maybe as much as it's disrespected him. They expected him to be this heir apparent that he just was probably not cut out to be. It sounds as if he's always constantly missing weight or on drugs, probably in an effort to do something that his mind and body don't want to let him to. All of this goes to say he's still a piece of shit for all the obvious reasons. But
dude, if there was one fight not to miss weight on, it was this one.
He gave away $100,000 in purse money in order to let the fight go forward. He's a sympathetic figure, but I hope we never, and I would have said this a couple of years ago, I hope we never see him in a boxing ring again.
I've been wanting to not see him in a boxing ring for quite some time.
Yeah.
I thought he should have retired after the Canelo fight. I thought he didn't deserve the Canelo fight. I was ringside for that fight. I saw how frustrated his father was throughout that fight. Look, the Mexican fans, they love to get on Canelo, say that Televisa puffed his record, gave him more recognition than he deserved. And I agree with you guys. I think the last name did that for Junior. It's a touchy subject because Junior's going through the demons that his father went through during his career, and has now just celebrated, I believe, 12 years of being sober. I think he did that. He announced that on Friday. And I know firsthand Junior's going through some stuff. For years, Junior's been going through some stuff. But get the help, man. And guess what? Boxing's not the help. Boxing is not the place you go to clean yourself up. It's not. And I think Senior has a lot to do with the fact that Chavez is the way he is. Junior was around a lot of things that he shouldn't have been around, and that's Senior's fault. No child should be around the stuff, the parties, the womanizing, the stuff that he was shown. No child should see that, but he did, and you decided to go down this path, and you decided to chase down your dad's, and somewhat you're doing that, but there's also some good to your father. And your father showed the world what it is to train to get ready for a fight. Still does. Still does. I just spent a week with the man in Dallas, and the guy goes for runs at 2 a.m. Junior's not doing that, because if Junior was doing that, he wouldn't be missing weight and giving up $100,000, and not just missing weight, but by 2 full pounds to a 46-year-old UFC fighter. So
on a broken leg.
Come on, man.
You guys remember when they did the 24/7 and he was getting, to the gym late, wasn't training.
It's been his whole career. It's been the whole career.
He's never it's like we were saying earlier, like this is something he was thrown into. Like, it's like if one of the Manning brothers just didn't like football, except, like all of them except one, which, his career got cut short from injuries, or Hall of Famers. Obviously, this isn't the case here.
Right. Yeah, it is too bad. And to Victor's point, I hope Junior gets the help that he needs. And frankly, that should be as much distance as possible from the sport of boxing, because it doesn't carry a life that he wants, and there's too much pressure associated with it, particularly the connection with his father. And but kudos to Anderson Silva, man, because now I really do want to see that Roy Jones fight that they've been talking about for a long time. Why the hell not?
Look, my issue with Junior is you can't sit there and take the pills and do the stuff you do, and then hop on videos and dance in women's outfits and start calling out Canelo, and that's the fight people want to see, and that you beat Jacobs and you need rematches. You need help, man. And instead of getting on Instagram Live or your stories or whatnot and calling people out who are way past you, it should be embarrassing to you that on Saturday, the day before Father's Day, your dad is calling Canelo over ringside to help him in the ring and telling the world, telling your country that he is the greatest Mexican fighter of all time, that at one point that he had his time, but that now the greatest Mexican fighter is Canelo Alvarez, and a guy who you lost to because you decided to not even throw in that fight. That should be embarrassing. That should be eye-opening enough. But I get it. There's demons that run deeper between both senior and junior, and Junior's having a tough time in his life with the things that are going on right now. But it's just sad to see, man. And boxing is not the cure. So stop getting in the ring. Stop calling out UFC fighters. Stop calling out Canelo. Stop saying you beat Jacob. Stop saying that it was just a broke. Stop. Just stop and go get help, because your dad has helped out a ton of people. And if it's not your dad who you're willing to allow to help you, then there's plenty of other options. But you need some serious help. And boxing is not it. Boxing's not your rehab.
Like David said, kudos to Anderson Silva. He did what he had to do to win. And we might see him against Roy Jones. We might see him against one of the Paul brothers. You never know. And before we go, there's something that we've talked about, and I was texting with David, this morning about it. People are gonna get on this fight. Anderson Silva, the MMA fighter, the UFC champ, fighting at 46. Oh, what an embarrassment to boxing. If he fights one of the Paul brothers, oh, what an embarrassment to boxing. Jake Paul. Oh, he's fighting again. What an embarrassment to boxing. It's not an embarrassment to boxing. I'd rather see any of those fights. I'd rather see Holyfield, Brian McBride. I'd rather see Holyfield against Brian McKnight, for all I care. A professional fight took place in Bolivia. Yeah, there's boxing in Bolivia, apparently. Saul Farah, who's 73, 26-3. I checked his record. He's fought like the same guys over and over and over. It's like if you fight, David and I fight 8 times because
there's no one else.
Hashtag boxing.
There's not many options in Bolivia.
Apparently not. Well, this guy, supposedly Farah, is the bridgerweight champion of what? I don't know. Fighting a guy named Pedro Tabarez. Look up this video on Twitter. I'm not gonna show it to you guys because I don't want, there's lawsuits and all that stuff, right? Look it up on Twitter.
That's the one that stomps on the guy on the floor.
He knocks the guy down, punches him while he's down, stomps on him, breaks his nose. What the hell, man? It's like we've said, professional boxing has embarrassed itself time and time again, over and over again. And this isn't a knock on boxing. It's my favorite sport. It's, I when I was 18 years old, I didn't go to a dance with my girlfriend at the time after she begged me, because I'm like, De La Hoya's fighting Trinidad. Are you freaking crazy? Go by your damn self. all by yourself. True story. I'm not even
do
kidding.
that. And I believe it.
I was almost like I felt disrespected that she even wanted me to miss that fight. But so it's no knock on boxing, but and I told the story about the guy wearing the pizza outfit. Like stop. Like if you're gonna allow this shit to happen, but you're not cool with Jake Paul fighting, then you got a problem.
Yeah. Well, they don't know Bolivia. They can't even find it on a map.
But Mike Tyson knocked the guy out into Bolivia.
Into Bolivian.
2 cents on this, guys, or
And
or do we just wrap up?
I think I think we wrap up on the note. You said your piece. Boxing has been hurt far more by anything other than the Paul brothers, and I'll go to the grave with that.
Look, the embarrassment this weekend was a professional boxer who held the world title before.
Yep.
And whoever kicked Saul Farah, who, by the way, isn't Bridgerweight supposed to be like between cruiserweight and heavyweight? Because this guy looked like north of Andy Ruiz.
He looked humongous.
I don't know. I don't know what Bridgerweight means in Bolivia, but
doesn't mean much.
The 300-pound division.
Jake Paul, give me that.
But guys, we're gonna start wrapping up because we always go on too long. Thank God Teofimo and Cambosos didn't fight, because if not, this would have been like 8 hours long. But really quick, Gervonta Davis against Mario Barrios this weekend. Really quick, one sentence: who wins and how?
Tank Davis by attrition. As much as I'm not a huge Tank fan, he's the goods. I think Tank has some moments, has to get past the jab, but I think his power does carry to 140. It's legit, and I think Barrios doesn't hold up to it and probably gets stopped in the late rounds.
Victor?
I think Gervonta Davis wins by knockout. I think he's on the right track, and he realizes it's time to start looking the part and carrying himself like the champion he wants to be. And I like him to win this Saturday easily.
Yep, Gervonta Davis, TKO 6. And coming up next, the fight that I would want to see at 140, Tank Davis versus Regis Prograis. Sign it. I want to see that fight. They've already been talking trash on Twitter. I want to see that fight. So make it happen.
Prograis fan.
Make it happen.
Love watching that guy. I would take it.
And Gervonta told the audience this past week, told everybody that would listen, he's not buying into that COVID stuff. I didn't want to get it. It's not what I wanted to say directly, but as I said, ticket sales had a lot to do with that fight not happening this past Saturday. And I think Gervonta's on to something.
Yep. I think you're right too.
August 14th. Marlins play at Marlins Park.
Guy tests positive for COVID, but we already have a date set up.
In a different city.
Amazing how that happened.
Yeah.
Well, this has been Boxing During Dinner, and we'll catch you maybe later on this week or maybe next week. You just never know.